So you've made some bad life choices. You still have an active suspension Soarer, and you want to know how to fix your leaky, droopy, saggy struts. The good thing is, this doesn't require any special tools. It does, however, require a bit of attention to detail and thorough inspection and cleaning of all the components that you disassemble and reassemble. In the kits I provided to those of you that got them, you will notice you have to supply a few things on your own. The first is the oil fork seals. These are responsible for holding back the oil and stopping it from leaking out. You need to provide your own bellows dust boots. These are currently remade by James Glindeman. You may be able to find some others that sort of work. I know some older Holden, possibly VY bellows dust boots work with some modifications. And in the sad case you find your bump stops to be destroyed, you will need to find an alternative. This could be from finding a similar one in another shock and boring them out to either 36mm and 32mm respectively for the front and rear shocks. The kits I produced, however, do include the high pressure teflon seals and a full kit of nitrile O-rings. What does all this fix? Firstly, it fixes droopy, droppy struts. This is when your car's turned off and overnight or in a few hours you notice it's starting to sag on either one or all sides. This isn't normal. An active suspension Soarer should last for weeks, if not months, without any noticeable drop in ride height. This is usually caused from worn Teflon seals, which are included in the kit. Sometimes, in rarer cases, severely scored chrome rods, which could be caused from a lack of dust boots and excessive driving after that. The other item this fixes will be leaky struts. So if you're noticing that your struts are wet or you're losing suspension fluid, this is a likely cause and very common. It's simply caused from wear over time. There's not much you can do about it other than replacing the seals. What does this not fix? Bounce. The dreaded bounce is caused by lower accumulators that are depleted of gas. The upper leg rebuild doesn't include this. This can be remedied by a variety of solutions with varying success. They come from either as simple as trying to regas the accumulators as is via either needle valves or direct fit Schrader valves, or entire rebuilds which involve cutting open the bottom of the accumulator on a lathe, replacing the seals and re-welding. It will also not fix other random issues such as leveling issues caused by bad height sensors or valve body issues and pump issues. In the future I do hope to do a pump rebuild kit and I'll have an associated video for that. To get the job done you'll need a few things. Some of the key things are a set of long and short metal picks, a oil filter removal tool, a 32 and a 36mm spanner, and some pipe grips. You'll also need a set of seals. Make sure you have the high pressure Teflon seals and the O-rings, along with the oil fork seals. I also recommend you have a bucket and a tray for storing seals and various components. This strut's ready for disassembly. You'll notice I've removed the top hats and given it an external clean. Firstly, place your strut in a vise. Make sure you grab onto a flat area down the bottom so it doesn't turn, and use the oil filter removal tool to undo the hat. Note, these can be very tight and you may need to look into alternate ways to remove this. I've already loosened it. Unscrew it as so. Next, we need to remove the top of the strut from the accumulator. Use your spanner to do so. Note that I'm actually missing the bump stop on mine. I didn't have one available for the footage. You'll have to just move the bump stop out of the way when you do this. Pull it all apart, and there you go. Once you've done this, grab your pipe grips and undo the oil seal cap. Once it's loose, you're going to do it by hand. From here, we need to pop out the inner, the rod and the inner tube. Sometimes these come out as one, sometimes they don't. In this case, we weren't lucky and we left the inner tube behind. To get the inner tube out, use some rubber and some pliers of some sort, press along the sides and pull out. Don't try to grab it with the pliers, you'll damage the tube and might not seal properly. Once you've got everything apart, you notice we have our rod. On it we have our high pressure cap that stores the Teflon seals and an O-ring. We also have our orange guide. Just remove that for safekeeping. Make sure you keep everything clean and wipe everything down. Carefully inspect the rod for damage. I've seen in the past, and as you see this one has a slight amount of damage from the spanners themselves. Make sure you've got any burrs off this, because when you try to reinstall these in the caps, you can damage them quite easily, along with damaging your new seals. After inspecting the end, inspect the surface of the rod. You notice any small grooves, see if you can feel them with your nail. If you can't, you're probably okay. If you can feel them, you need to get the rod re-chromed. Inspect the cap. That's the Teflon seal we want to remove. You'll notice that the cap has a few seams. These are normal. Next, we need to remove our high pressure Teflon seal. Use one of your picks to pick this out. There's two seals in here, a Teflon seal and a backing O-ring. Note this is an aggressive way of removing them, but these aren't being reused anyway. Next, get out the backing O-ring because we'll be replacing this as well. Match up the Teflon seal and O-ring with the new one from the kit. I like to pre-size these on the rods. I like to do this by getting a little bit of suspension fluid, coating the top of the rod, and individually putting the seal on. Notice on the side of the screen the installation direction. Do not get this backwards, you will destroy the seal when you install them in the caps. They can be quite tight, sort of slide them on and around. This one's already loose as I've already installed it. I like to leave them like this for a little while. That ensures the seal sizes. Another trick you can do if you would like to ensure that they have properly sized is I like to fill a bucket with hot water and soak them in it for a few minutes. Doing this on the rod ensures that they are not too tight when you try to install them with the cap and risk damaging them. However, this is optional and isn't 100% necessary. Once you've done this, you can get your cap ready for installation. The first step is to install the matching backing O-ring. This is pretty easy. You can simply do this by contorting the O-ring around and placing it in the concealed groove. The Teflon seal is a little bit more difficult. It can be a little bit scary. I suggest you trying this with the original seals. Take them in and out a few times and get used to this. This is called the kidney method. You need to shape the Teflon seal like a kidney. This will allow it to reduce in diameter just enough to get it into the concealed groove. Once it's in there, you can simply press it around and it will return to its original shape. Be careful not to kink it. Watch as I do it. We're not folding it, we're ensuring that we very carefully create a smooth curve. Having heated these up in the hot water does help a little bit, just with their pliability. And that's in. Push it around the edges, ensure it's seated fully, so that way you don't not catch it, and put a bit of suspension fluid in there to lubricate it. Next step is to install the O-ring on the high pressure cap. Pretty easy job. Pull it off with a seal pick and stretch it back on. Next, you have to install the high pressure cap on the rod. Make sure you put your guide on first. When you place it on with the new seals, they will be pretty tight by the time the seal gets to it. Carefully tap it on the top. Use a little bit of pressure, but not too much. It will pop over, and then you're all good. If you've ensured you have no burrs on the top, you won't damage the seal. From here, the next step is to install the rod in the inner tube. Use a bit of lubricant on the guide. Place it in the inner tube. And put pressure on the high pressure cap to pop it in. Next step, in the top of the strut, there's actually a hidden O-ring. Up deep in there, there's a lip, and you need to use your long seal picks to get this out. These are the two shapes I find work best, a 90-degree and a slightly angled curved one. You can use these to carefully pick out the existing O-ring, one of them to get under it, and then use the 90-degree to sort of spin around the circumference of the inner lip and lift it up and out. By doing that, you can get the inner seal out and do the opposite to install the new seal. It is doable, it's pretty tricky, it's hard to also show on camera. The next step is to make sure you install your fork oil seals in your end caps. These are the ones that you source from a motorbike shop. The best way to get these in and out would be with a seal pick. So remove the existing one with a seal pick and use a press and die to install the new one. You don't need a lot of pressure, just make sure you don't push on the lips and damage your new seals. Once you've done that, replace the O-ring. Again, ensuring you use the correct O-rings for the correct job. Installing the fork oil seal on the end can be a bit tricky, especially with the ones sourced from the motorbike shops that are slightly undersized. They will work nonetheless. Rotate them around, you'll be able to get them over it. Next, we have to install the rod assembly inside the top of the strut. It's pretty straightforward. Simply place in the unit and start screwing in the end cap. You can do that by hand. It'll slowly push together all the components inside. Then ensure it is relatively tight, but it doesn't have to be overly tight. Last step before we assemble the accumulators and the top strut is to change the O-ring on the accumulator itself. Next step is to get the new boots that you've possibly gotten off James Glinderman. Place them on the top of the strut and push them up and out of the way of what you're doing. This is also a time to put on the bump stop that I also don't have shown in the video. Then screw the components together. Once you've done that, grab the accumulator hat, screw it onto the accumulator, ensure this is firm,
Pop the boot over the hat and you're basically done. From here, we simply need to put on some clamps and we're good to go. It's as easy as that.